We're excited to bring you today's guest, Joshua Coburn. He's a motivational speaker, as well as an author, podcaster, and YouTuber. Go to our show notes at thisispawprint.com/56 to learn more. We'll also be posting a lot of photos of Joshua and Willie, his cat. Find us on Instagram at thisispawprint, all one word. We'll also post photos of our two latest fosters, Curry, who's a wonderful Chihuahua Dachshund mix, and our newest one, Chloe, a wonderful cream-colored puppy, kind of looks like an Italian greyhound, just beautiful. Check us out on Instagram, and on to the show. This is Pawprint, an animal rescue community, episode 56. I'm Harold Ree, and today, to introduce our episode, we have a good friend of the podcast, Aaron Render. Aaron, hello.
Hi, Harold. How's it going today?
Do you prefer Aaron Render or Aaron Static Render?
Either one works. Aaron Static Render is more Googleable and goes back to my radio days. So,
well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your podcast? Tell us a little bit about the guest and why you thought this guest would have been or is a good guest for Pawprint.
My podcast is Uncontained. I interview bands, comedians, actors, basically anybody in the entertainment industry. And I keep the first half of the show very conversational. Then I like to get advice for people who are trying to get started out in the industry, like whether it's just getting off the couch and getting on stage or looking to take that next step. And also how people can live, quote unquote, uncontained by going against the societal norms, being like, oh, you aren't going to make it as an entertainer. You have to have this 9 to 5 instead.
What's been your own sort of ups and downs, successes and struggles in that endeavor?
In the podcast?
Yeah, podcast or in your own sort of entertainment goals.
As I mentioned earlier, I did radio. I did radio in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I moved out here. I also have done some stand-up comedy, so kind of got familiar with both sides of those. I've been friends with people in bands. I've seen bands up and down, been up and down myself with radio and not having a show. And then it's part of the reason I missed having a voice, so I started this show.
So tell us a little bit about Mr. Joshua Coburn.
Josh Coburn. I believe he was episode number 7 for me. Josh and I go back quite a ways. Met him through some friends who were in the band Freak Label at the time. Josh at the time was a body modification artist, like doing scarification, body implants, piercings, all that stuff. And over time, he decided to move out of that and transition into motivational speaker.
Right.
Yeah, he got into motivational speaking, and even though he didn't quite fit as an entertainer, like in the entertainment industry, he had a lot of good advice as far as marketing yourself on social media and marketing your product. Why did I think he'd be great for Pawprint? Because he has a one-eyed cat named Willie.
Awesome.
That he adopted.
Thanks, Aaron. Here we are with Joshua Coburn. Really just a great guy, great conversation, and we get to know a little bit about his one-eyed cat.
I am an author, mentor, life coach, motivational speaker, radio show host, YouTuber. Really, what it is that I do, cut and dry, it's my goal to change lives positively, to make a positive impact on the world. My primary focus is generally middle and high school students, and of course, college-age students and some adults that I work with. But really, the focus in that area comes from the fact that most of my deep-seated personal struggles are from that time. My hardest years, as it were, began when I was roughly 12 and lasted until I was in my mid-20s, which is a good chunk of that specific time. And I realized, number one, how impressionable I was at that age and how lost I felt and how uncomfortable I felt and all the changes you experienced and all the anxiety that comes with changing and all that stuff. So I felt like it was my job to essentially help that generation always kind of feel comfortable with themselves and their changes and whatever it is they're going through. I remember specifically in junior high sitting and watching a motivational speaker, a Vietnam vet who was probably amazing at his job, especially, who he reached. But I remember specifically thinking, wow, I can't quite connect to this individual, and thinking, I know what I need to hear right now, and no one was saying that. So I essentially wanted to grow up and fill that void, and that's what I do.
So this Vietnam vet, while obviously a talented individual, sounds like it didn't quite connect with what you were wanting to hear.
I think for me, my struggles were, lack of self-esteem. I didn't feel good about who I was. I was struggling with depression. My parents were divorced. I came from an alcoholic family. And his story, and again, very touching. I have massive respect for all veterans. Still to this day is one of my main focuses. But at that time, at 12, 13, 14, whatever age that I was, hearing about, battlefield stories and how hard that was, while now as an adult, I really get that. At that age, I just couldn't kind of make that connection. I hadn't been through maybe quite enough in life to understand the loss that this man experienced and the sacrifice and the service. I just couldn't connect.
Can you recall the first time a message did connect with you, or a speaker or something did connect with you and make you pause?
It wasn't so much kind of a speaker. It was music. To me, a speaker, anyone on a public platform, basically holds the mic, if you will. And when I started to experience, you always hear music on the radio, but when I started to see artists on MTV in front of crowds of thousands speaking into the microphone and holding a crowd in the palm of their hand and singing their lyrics, that's what connected to me. Hard-edged guys like Henry Rollins from Black Flag and, people like that were still talking about positivity, but in a very different way than I'd ever seen. That's what really struck me. And honestly, to this day, that's still how I approach my speaking engagements. It's very much like I'm taking every moment between songs, that mid-song banter at a concert, and putting it out there, for an hour or 90 minutes to students. And it's awesome. That exchange of energy is huge. My main 5 points are to be willing to be vulnerable with others and accept others' vulnerability. Also to take chances on yourself and on other people, but also to understand that failure is a part of life and a part of taking chances. And you have to experience failure and the lessons that come with that to be successful. And not only that, it's really important to face down challenges, whether it's yours or somebody else's, and help others overcome theirs. But lastly, it's communication. Any major hurdle in life can be overcome with communication and unity. And that's what it's really about. It's about being comfortable in your own skin, connecting with the people around you, which we as a culture are getting worse and worse at. As you know, we're too busy staring at our cell phones rather than looking in one another's eyes and having a real, true blue connection.
I'm guilty of that too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, it's part of business. It's part of communication in general. So it's tough not to be buried in your phone part of the time. And then your leisure activities often result in looking at your phone,
Right.
So it's tough. But beyond that, if you want to reach your goals and your dreams, it's really tough to do that alone. You have to have those connections. The whole adage of it's not what you know, it's who you know. The older I get, the more I find is absolutely true. You can't have that unless you're willing to be vulnerable, to take a chance, to fail, to take on those challenges, and to communicate. You have to have those 5 elements in order to reach dreams. And that's what it's about. It's about being kind to one another. I really was not a confident young man. I've always struggled with my appearance. For the listeners who don't know, I'm very tattooed. I'm a heavily modified individual, face, head, hands, neck, everything's pretty well tattooed. And when I look at myself, I feel comfortable in my skin. I feel comfortable with the guy that I see. I feel comfortable with the people I surround myself with. But I also understand that there's a need to be challenged. And I think that's what I love most about myself, is that I am honest with who and what I am, with both what I love about myself and the positivity associated with it, but also with the negative things in my life. Because there's a lot of them. I'm not good at everything, but I'm also willing to kind of self-evaluate and, well, face my own challenges and search for ways to overcome them. Because I'm not perfect, but I want to get as close to that as I can.
Why do you think people are attracted to authenticity?
I'm going to go on record and say you're one of the best that I've ever had with questions. These are hard-hitting, great. I'm thinking hard. Thank you.
It's all these animal rescue interviews I've been conducting.
Absolutely. It's great. So what do I think it is that people connect with when it comes to authenticity?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the reason I connect, and actually I'm working on another project, and I'll be honest, I'm afraid of it because it is so authentic, it's so real. It strips away all the layers. And I think the reason is because there's a lot of things inside of all of us that we don't say. We think, we wrestle with, we lay it in bed at night and think about these things over and over. I'm 35 years old. I'm an adult male who people assume I have it very together. I would say I have my life pretty well together as well. But I still wrestle with things like the acceptance from my father, the approval from my father about my life. Am I doing enough? Am I good enough? And that comes from childhood. Being real like that, really, it made me realize how many other people are out there struggling with something very similar.
Okay.
And, it could be that, it could be anything. And I think that's where the connection comes from. I think that's why authenticity works so well, is because there's something deep we can attach to.
When you think of animals, what comes to mind? What inspires you about animals?
I love that animals are primal. I love that they're instinctive and instinctual. And that goes with both, the predatory aspects that a lot of people associate with animals, but it also comes with the love that it exudes from animals. And of course, that's what I'm about. I love that there's no judgment. There's nothing else. It's a matter of a true blue, non-judgmental relationship with animals. And there's so much we can learn from that as human beings.
Who was the first animal who sort of made an impact on you?
Well, when I was a little kid, we had a dog named Quick. He wasn't fast, but he was named Quick because he was a chocolate lab, and we associated that with Nestle's Quick as children.
Awesome.
The chocolate powder mix. He was kenneled fairly often. We were a regular working family, so part of the time he was kenneled. But I remember on the cold nights, I would go and I would crawl into his little house that we had built, and I would sit in there with him. And he would just sit with me, and it was quiet, and it would just kind of we would cuddle, and I wouldn't have to think about anything. I could just be there and be present with him, and that warmth and that acceptance felt very good, especially in a house where for me it was a little chaotic at times. So, really having a pet to, I guess, get me, if that makes sense, was nice. There's no judgment. That's what was so important with my first pet.
What other animals do you care to mention?
Because I cared so much for that dog, when he passed away, I was a senior in high school. It hurt, and I knew it would hurt because I cared so much. And we tend to run from pain, and I said that I'd never have an animal. And in fact, I said I'd never have kids because I didn't want to ever experience that worry and that pain that I associated with that. Crazy as it is, several years later, my wife at the time had found a kitten that was abandoned and had been left in or fallen into an oil drum.
Oh.
And it was covered in oil. Had taken it home and washed it up, and then brings it by the tattoo studio that I was working at the time and says, "Hey, look, this is what I found, and here's the deal." I couldn't say no. I knew that it was right. And I've had cats ever since. And that's how I became such a cat lover. That's why I have cats to this day. So that was our family's first rescue back then. It was a wonderful cat named Peanut. And it was the cutest black cat ever, which was somehow fitting for my edgy attitude at the time. So it was a cute little rescued black cat. After that came Willie, whom If you follow me on Facebook and Instagram, you see him pretty often. But he was also a rescue, and Willie is an animal that's probably taught me more about life than most people, I'll tell you that. I was asked by my stepmother if we wanted another cat to keep Peanut, who I just mentioned, company at home. And when it comes to cats, it's always nice to have a pair so they don't tear up the house, right? I said no. I said no often because, again, I associated having a pet with loss and pain and things like that. Even when I had Peanut, who, if anyone will tell you, knows that I mean, with Peanut and Willie, I would stay up with them. I would take care of them. I would do everything. They'd get up, I get up. And Willie came up through my stepmom. Hey, a friend of mine has this cat. He was kicked as a kitten by a group of teens, which is terribly unfortunate. And he needs a home because the woman who was fostering him already had some other disabled cats and couldn't handle another one on her own. I said no several times. And I thought after like the fourth kind of sign that this cat was supposed to be mine, I said, okay, fine. I will go visit this cat. And if it seems right, I'll get it. And I'd never seen a photo of this cat. I knew he was roughly 6-7 months old. He had lost his right eye, broken a jaw, offset the jaw, broke his right leg, had already been through surgery, had already had the cast off his leg, and healed up, all in 7 months. This cat had a rough beginning. I said to myself in my head as I'm driving to this woman's house to meet Willie for the first time, if she's named this cat Willie, he's mine. I walk in the door, I shake the woman's hand, I talk to her for a moment. I said, so let's meet this cat. And immediately she starts yelling for Willie. She's like, Willie, come here, buddy. And I knew. Goonies was one of my favorite movies as a kid. Willie was the pirate, and he only had one eye, so naturally One-Eyed Willie. Now, mostly, I refer to him as Sir William because he seems somehow like a much more sophisticated cat than in his younger days, I suppose. Maybe it sounds a little derogatory, but my kind of way of dealing with this, what I would have called a disabled cat, now looking back, I would say he's completely enabled. And like I said, taught me so much about strength and about judgment and about all these things, because honestly, he's definitely been my best friend for the last 11-ish years now. I took him home. He walked around the house a little bit and flopped over on his back, let me rub his belly. And I was like, all right, so we're buddies now. And I went and I sat down on the couch, and he came up and he sat right down on my lap and crossed his legs in this really strange way that I'd never seen before, which has to do with how he had to set his leg when he had broken it. And he still does to this day. And he's been through everything with me. Divorce, he's been through terrible business decisions, ups, downs, house purchases, house losses, reaching my dreams, shattering goals, all sorts of things. And there he is, supporting me, teaching me lessons all the time. It's so great. He had to go through 2 more surgeries after I got him. And I think those surgeries wrecked me more than they ever did him.
Oh, in what way?
Well, I was just so concerned about him. I mean, he is my buddy. He's my best friend, as crazy as that might sound. And he was always there. I didn't have him at night. And for those few days, and then he'd come home and he was all swollen and, shaved, and the stitches and the whole thing. I just felt like his pain. I felt so terrible for him, but he seemed so himself. Like, nah, this is business as usual, man. I got this every time. He's definitely teaching me about what it means to have strength and kind of go through it with dignity.
Let's say in the past 11 years that you've been with Willie, what is the toughest thing you've ever been through?
Just starting over is hard. When you hit bottom and you have to rebuild, those first few hours, days, weeks, months, years for some of us, it can be tough. And that's why, when I speak, it's always important to acknowledge those failures, because you learn so much about yourself. And success can be had 1,000 times. What you gain in that success, that's most important. So the failures matter. We all have failures on some level, whether it's, a teen failing a test or marriage, like we mentioned, or bad business decisions or anything. And I think acknowledging the failure, acknowledging the learnings from the failure, and understanding there's growth in it, I'm honored to do what I do. It's humbling. It keeps me, it makes me realize I'm one small gentleman in a world full of amazing, amazing people, if they're willing to tap into that. If they're not, we're a world full of fairly mediocre people who kind of sort of care about a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
But if you can tap into that passion, and a lot of times we as people aren't good at supporting that passion because we don't understand, or people are different, or we don't ask the questions, etc. But if we can tap into that kindness and that connection and that passion with the youth, their future, how they hold on to it and grow it and water those seeds is really unbelievable. And
Right.
the achievement that can happen. I mean, in the years that I've been doing this, the kind messages I've received back, sometimes hours later, months later, 10 years later, is something that I can't even wrap my head around, if that makes sense. You know,
Sure.
somebody says the words, you know, you changed my life, or I'm alive because of you.
Wow.
I don't even know how to process that fully. I tell them thank you, and honestly, it fills me up in a way with gratitude that I can't even explain, because it's so great. But at the same time, like, it's so tough because that's such a large statement. And I'm honored that I could be a part of their life in that way, in any way, but
Right.
in that way, it's such an honor.
On average, how many times do you speak a year? How far have you had to travel to speak?
I'm willing to speak all over the world. Primarily, obviously, I'm in the United States. In the last year, I haven't spoken near as much as the past several years, because I'm working on the new radio show I mentioned. I have the YouTube show, The Relief, because I started to realize that when I'm in front of 2,000 students, I can have an unbelievable one-to-one reaction and interaction, really get that energy into me and into them, and feel that whole vibe of the room. But I can reach millions every day by putting, episodes on YouTube or hitting iTunes with the radio show, Wellraiser Radio, or something like that. So I've been focusing very heavy there so I can increase my reach, which, as you know, ultimately puts me into more schools so I can interact one-to-one. I really try to keep myself, obviously I have a family, I have a wife and 2 children. I usually try to speak no more, unless they're condensed into, successive days. If I'm traveling, I try to travel no more than 6 to 12 days per month.
So you really are trying to spend as much time in Iowa as possible.
After, all those screaming kids have gone quiet in the assemblies that I put on at the Manners and Motivation events, and after the internet and television is shut off and my phone is turned off, the people that are there are my wife, my kids, my pets. And that always keeps my headspace right. It keeps me humble and reminds me of what's important. I'm not good at not working because I love what I do. If I keep that into perspective, and I don't really believe there's balance, but if I keep the focus where it needs to be, everything else will develop as it needs to.
Thanks for sharing that. If people are going to catch up with you, let's say they watch your YouTube show, The Relief, you just launched your podcast, Wellraiser Radio. Do you want to give people a taste of what they should expect when they check you out, either on YouTube or on the podcast?
Certainly, yeah. Wellraiser Radio is centered around speaking with anyone from individuals who have begun nonprofits to A-list celebrities, sports icons, and musicians. So we cover the gamut. Our first guest is actually Robbie Ripple, who is a tattoo artist on Spike TV's Ink Masters Rivals. So a lot of people know who he is. But our show is different in a sense that we're not necessarily talking about exactly what the individual is doing at the moment, but the struggles that they went through to get from point A to their goals, or to reaching their dreams and living the positive lifestyle that they live. So, I mean, we all know that Sylvester Stallone was Rocky, right? And how inspiring, the original Rocky was. But what a lot of people don't know is that he carried that script around with him in his bag when he was losing his house and his car and was walking the streets. And, that's a big gap there. He's still got that story to tell too. And I don't want people to miss those stories, because everybody, like we talked earlier, has their darkest days. And everybody has to understand that we've all experienced them. So it's about that connection with Wellraiser Radio. With the relief, that is part of my relief and resource center, where teens and adults can go to basically research whatever it is they're dealing with in one place. And we're always adding, always building. But if you're struggling with, suicidal thoughts or alcoholism or taking chances and overcoming challenges, go there, scroll down, find the word, click it, and it will give you maybe an article. Generally with the relief, it's a video on that topic. And it's often me, sometimes funny, sometimes seriously, discussing my experiences with that topic. And eventually we'll be bringing in others for things that I haven't dealt with. I was never one who dealt with, anorexia or bulimia, but that is a topic that we've been requested to cover a lot. So
Sure.
We'll bring someone in to cover that with me. So we do get the answers all in one place. So you're not stuck Googling all these million things and clicking around. It'll all be housed in one place, which is the Relief and Resource Center at joshuacoburn.com.
What is the rest of this year? What does it look like for Joshua Coburn?
There's a lot of things happening kind of behind the scenes with me. I can't legally make the statement beyond that I have been traveling back and forth to Los Angeles, California a lot for various projects, which is exciting for some unknown kid in small town Iowa. and and not only that, there's always, of course, more episodes of The Relief and Wellraiser Radio coming. Definitely more schools on the horizon. But one of the things that has been brewing in the back of my mind for a while is a new book. So I'm excited to start putting pen to paper beyond ideas and to start getting that kind of around to make that happen. So that's exciting.
What are the best ways to find you?
JoshuaCoburn.com will get you everything you need, everything we've talked about tonight, including pictures of Willie, all on JoshuaCoburn.com. All my social media can be found there as well if you scroll to the bottom and hunt around a little bit. Email, and you know what? Even my phone number is on there. It's on there because if you're struggling and you need something, text me. I'm real. I say I'll be there. I will be there. So reach out. Anyone who's having issues, I'm here. Absolutely.
We want to say thank you to Joshua Coburn for sharing his story. Make sure to check out his podcast, Wellraiser Radio, as well as his YouTube show, The Relief. We also want to say thank you to Aaron Static Render of the Uncontained podcast for making the connection. If you'd like to learn more about Joshua Coburn, you can find us at thisispawprint.com/56. That's the number 56. If you'd like to nominate someone to be a future guest on Paw Print, you can email us at thisispawprint@gmail.com or go to our contact page, thisispawprint.com/contact. If you'd like to listen to more episodes of Paw Print, you can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Pocket Casts, and YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes immediately. If you want to meet me or Nancy on social media, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Simply look for This Is Paw Print, all one word. Don't forget, if you join our community, you'll get 2 free bonus dog training resources from our favorite positive reinforcement dog trainer, Irit Bloom. Simply go to thisispawprint.com/ask to sign up. We want to say thank you to all of you for sharing Paw Print with your friends and family. And remember that you spread a positive message of love and peace by saving an animal. Have a great day, everyone, and see you next time with another great guest on Paw Print.
Paw Print is a production of EVER Education.
You can't handle the truth.